All right, so thanks for having me, guys. I run what's called the Environmental Humanities minor at the university. I started it about 10 years ago, and I've recently started what's called an environmental justice internship program that I use to fund students at the university to come down, some in Delaware, but a lot of it in Baltimore to do environmental justice work. A lot of that has to do with food justice, and that's what I was going to focus on today. So I'm going to just show you, some of you may know about Baltimore, some of you may not. Some of you may think you know a lot about Baltimore from various stereotypes or myths of one sort or another. I've lived here for 20 years and know it well and love it quite a bit. So I won't spend too much time on this, but some of you may know what redlining is. Redlining is quite a well-documented story of banks and federal housing authorities denying primarily black families from getting home mortgages. And this may be 100 years ago. And what you find is that families of all kinds, black and white and everybody else, a whole bunch of a family's wealth is tied up in their house if they own a house. So if someone 100 years ago was not allowed to buy a house, they had to rent instead of accumulating value in their house. They were paying rent for, generations after generations. And therefore, you see the wealth gap between white families in the suburbs and black families in the city getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So what you're looking at there, the redlining, the red sections of the city of Baltimore is known as the black butterfly. Those are like the red wings of the city. That's where most African American people in Baltimore live, on the east side or the west side. So what you find in Baltimore is neighborhoods that are very wealthy. In fact, quite significant wealth in kind of mansion-sized houses with big, in many cases, walls around them. And you can walk one block and find homes that have their roofs falling in. The latest number you'll hear in Baltimore is that there are 13,000 residences that are abandoned. So 13,000 buildings have no people living in them. Or they have people squatting in them. So the gap in wealth in the city is quite extreme. And there are all kinds of reasons for that, and we can spend time talking about it if you feel like it. So when it comes to food, where do poor communities get their food? I recently just stood on one street in Baltimore and kind of did a 360 and just took pictures from where I was standing. So you can buy food. There are no supermarkets. You probably have heard the term food justice or food apartheid. This is what we're talking about. So where you find food is in places like Family Dollars or really crappy fast food restaurants, Dollar Tree. These are all just within a block of where I was standing. You can find fast food, of course. McDonald's is happy to open up restaurants in poor neighborhoods all over the country. But there's no access to fresh food, no access to supermarkets of any kind. In fact, there are places in the city where you'd have to get on a bus for an hour to get to a supermarket. So I do all kinds of things to try to intervene in this, both as an individual person and as a professor and a community activist. So once a week, I have a pickup truck and I drive it up to the back of a Whole Foods. You guys know about Whole Foods. We call it Whole Paycheck, very expensive, high-end supermarket, caters to a high-end, wealthy clientele. That's what the inside of the market looks like. But if you go into the back, they have been convinced in recent years to donate food that they can't sell rather than throw it away. Now, not too long ago, all of this stuff that I'm going to show you would have gone into a dumpster. But a lot of people and organizations have started to go into supermarkets and say it is unconscionable that you're throwing out all this food. It might be one day past due date or whatever it is. And those sell-by dates are completely arbitrary in most cases. Like you can buy a tub of hummus and it'll say sell by October 10th. And if you ate it on November 10th, there would be no problem, right? It's just they've got these stamps on them. So here's what one day looks like. So that's coming out, that's going out of the store into my truck, out of the store into my truck, out of the store into my truck, out of the store into my truck. If you look at that, like that quiche that you're looking at there, that's probably $15 just for that one thing. And this stuff is going out the back, going into the dumpster unless someone picks it up. I do it 1 day a week, but Whole Foods, someone is picking up at Whole Foods 7 days a week. This is stuff is going out the back door, not being sold, but being given away, which is great. It's way better than the dumpster, but it just shows you the insane volume of food that is not being sold and used to be thrown away. Also, keep in mind the amount of plastic packaging around this stuff, which we're all buying, or in this case, it's being given away, but the plastic packaging that goes along with this food is absolutely beyond belief. 1 day into the truck. I mean, it's just unbelievable. This is like cart after cart after cart after cart on a single day. I picked up something like 150 pints of high-end ice cream that was going out the back. There was so much ice cream that the pantry that I was bringing it to, they didn't know what to do with it all. They said, we can't move this much ice cream. So one thing to keep in mind here is that there is not a shortage of food. There is not a shortage of food really in most places. There's plenty of food. The question is, how does that waste, how does that excess food find people that need it? If you start doing a dive into this, you'll find that both in the United States and worldwide, something like 40% of the food that is produced does not get eaten. So something like close to half of the food in the world is produced and not eaten. So there are massive, massive inefficiencies in the system. So what to do? So in addition to doing that, I also run an urban farm in the city. It is both a food producing operation and an educational one. So we bring in little kids, we bring in college kids, we bring in graduate students, we bring in church groups. We teach them how to grow food for the community. So it's called the Rock Rose Food Justice Project. If you want to check it out on Instagram, we've got a little Instagram account. Little kids come in, you teach them how to plant peas, teach them how to water pumpkins. Little kids love watering cans. And at the same time, they're getting outside, they're getting off their phones, they're getting into the pretty part of the city that they don't get to see as often. We have a hoop house there. We have 26 rows. We have something like 15 raised beds, and we produce a tremendous amount of food. We're delivering around 100 pounds a week to various communities that are not finding other ways to get fresh produce. So that's roughly half, that picture there is roughly half the size of what we've got going. So we grow all kinds of stuff. We grow eggplants and peppers and zucchinis and okra and herbs and tomatoes and everything you can think of, and at quite a scale. Beets, kale, carrots. 100 pounds a week is a lot of produce. So right now we're harvesting 3 days a week and delivering it to different community partners. Some of our partners cook the food and are handing out free meals. 100% of what we grow, we give away for free, by the way, where no one's buying it. It's grown and given away. In some places, it's cooked and handed out as cooked meals. They take our vegetables and roast them and make things like soups and salads and stews and all kinds of yummy, highly nutritious stuff. Other places it's given away. A very good friend of mine who actually was in my classroom today, named Ulysses Archie, sets up what he calls a free table in something. His nonprofit is called the Baltimore Gift Economy. They give away, he also goes to supermarkets and gets what comes out of the back, and I deliver him produce. So we are providing fresh produce and also stuff from the supermarket, in this case, twice a week to his particular table. And people come and take food for free. The idea is that not everything has to be profitable. We can just do it for the good of the community. This summer, I had students in there busting up pallets to make chicken coops because Ulysses, that's Ulysses there on the left in the purple shirt. He raises chickens, he raises rabbits, he raises goats, all in the city. He is teaching people to remember their agricultural roots, whether they're from the American South or whether they're from overseas. Every tradition, every culture in the world has farming in its background, and we have just forgotten about it, and we've offloaded it to industrial food producers, much to our detriment. That's his little kid working with one of my interns on, we all do a lot of forest work, forest maintenance, cutting invasive vines, planting trees, that kind of thing. And these are his goats. That's Ulysses on the left. Magnolia is the mom, and Magnolia has a little baby that we haven't named yet, but they run around. And if you never hang out, if you've never hung out with goats, you should do it sometime because they are more fun than dogs and probably smarter and just very charismatic creatures. So that's a very quick trip. That's me with a bunch of garlic that we harvested and delivered. And that is, I guess, probably about 10 minutes or so. So I just wanted to show you some pictures, tell you what we're up to. And if you end up coming to UD, you can hook up with the project and get involved. So anybody have any questions?
Thank you. Before we start with questions, thank you so much. That was really inspirational, and I think that your work is absolutely amazing and is really important. I'll start off our Q&A, and actually, I was going to ask that same question. So, Ms. McClinton just mentioned that her little brother was in one of your photos. So, how do people originally find out about this program? So how do people get involved? Like was just said in the chat.
Well, I will answer it as briefly and as thoroughly as I can. If you're a University of Delaware student, you should come see me. If you are a future University of Delaware student, you should come see me. If you are not a UD student and don't want to be a UD student and you go somewhere else to college or you want to do this work in Delaware or wherever you're from, you should just plug into the food justice system. That could be through a food bank. It could be through a local nonprofit farm. It could be through any kind of food distribution operation. That could be a food pantry operating out of a church or a synagogue or a mosque, or it could be working with community gardens. There actually are way more people doing this kind of work than you might think. And all you got to do is go find them. And once you find one, they will plug you into lots of other people that do it. Baltimore happens to be a place that is just really overflowing with interesting projects like this. So I'd also encourage you to come on down to Baltimore. If you want to come see what we're doing, come down and check it out. Um, and, work, depending on what you think about Baltimore, you should reimagine what you think it is because it's actually an incredibly cool place that has become a national model for a lot of these projects. So that stuff we're doing down here is kind of setting an example for lots of other places.
All right, so I believe some people have asked some things in the meeting chat, but if you want to just unmute and ask your questions, that will be great.
How about you? Everyone raised your virtual hand if you have a question.
Jeshin raised her hand. You can go ahead.
Hi. Thank you. That was really interesting. I was wondering just for like if anyone wanted to like start that, like how did you initially like get the funding to start that garden in Baltimore?
That's a great question. I actually didn't get any funding, and I don't get a lot of funding. That is, Baltimore, like many cities, has what are called city farms. It's actually land owned by the city. So there are things that I can't do. Like I'm not allowed to put up fruit trees, for example. For whatever reason, the city says you can grow vegetables, but you can't plant trees to grow apples or pears or figs or whatever. Fine. I wish I could, but I'm willing to live with that. So what I would recommend is if you're interested, get involved first without like putting up a lot of money and learn how to do it and get involved with groups that have already got the infrastructure, like they've already got land. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. Like you start first with joining a group, and then if you like it, you stick around. If you don't like it, then you take the next step and go looking around for your own kind of project. We are now applying for grants. I've gotten a lot of money from UD, but also some down here, there's something known as the Chesapeake Bay Trust, which has money that you can apply for. We're about to apply for a grant for them. We just got Ulysses, the guy with the goats. He and I just got a $65,000 grant to plant trees all over this same neighborhood. So like in addition to the farm work, we're also reforesting a lot of the city. And Delaware, trust me, needs a lot more trees, not just a lot more food. Delaware is a phenomenally overdeveloped state that you guys have been building subdivisions up there in the suburbs like crazy, and that you have lost an incredible amount of tree cover. I also want to put in the chat something you ought to check out called the Delaware Master Naturalist Certification Program, which I started with scientific colleagues. You can look it up, and I actually edited the textbook for it called the Delaware Master Naturalist Handbook. And that will give you a lot of information about how to do environmental restoration work. That book actually is not really about farming. It's much more about everything else, like everything else you can do to repair the environment. So I wrote the book for the state of Delaware and started the program, and now I'm editing the book for the state of Maryland. So with my colleagues, we're trying to build a lot more like educational infrastructure to teach people that want to know more about this stuff.
Thank you so much for your answer. Oh, wait.
Isabella has a question in the chat, says, how old do you have to be to participate? It's probably best if you're at least 5 years old.
It's pretty young.
If you're older than 5, come on down. And I have 85-year-old women that come every week to water plants too. So like between 5 and 85 is probably a sweet spot.
I think Miss Trainer asked, how do you distribute the food, and if you have community centers that you work with?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very, very interesting question, and one that needs a lot more minds on it. So I always think of them basically like there are three models. One model is you bring it to a church and they take what you have and they divide it up by the number of people that come. So if they have 25 families that come in on, say, Tuesday afternoons, they'll take your produce and they'll divide it by 25 and stick, one tomato in 25 different bags. That's fine. And that's a very traditional way to do it. The only problem is that those people then might take the bag of food home and they might open it up and they might see a tomato, which they recognize, but they also might see okra, which they don't recognize. And then that okra gets thrown away. And if you're the guy that grew it, you don't want your food getting thrown away. You want it to get eaten. So the second model is you bring it to a place where they put it on a table and people walk by, and if they know it and want it, they take it. And if they don't recognize it, they don't take it. That's, I think, a better model. And the last model is you bring it to a kitchen, a nonprofit kitchen, and they take your produce and they mix it. Maybe they went to the food bank and got a bunch of chicken breasts or whatever it is, and they take your produce, mix it with the chicken breast, and they make a meal. And so 100% of what you're delivering to the kitchen is getting cooked and then eaten. So when you're the person growing the food, what you want is the most efficient delivery of fresh produce to actual stomachs. Like it's not enough for it to get put into a bag in a church basement. I want that food to get eaten. So you have different models, and they all have their pluses and minuses, but it's something that people spend a lot of time trying to figure out.
All right. Do we have any more questions for Professor Jenkins?
Stephanie says, are these churches and food kitchens in the food deserts? That's a very good question. And the answer generally is yes. And for better or for worse, I want you to know that, especially if you're working in cities, it's really worth, well, depending on where you are, in places like Baltimore, the Black church, like the network of Black churches, is a very powerful ally in this work, because Black churches in many cities are community centers. Like there's way more going on there than just churches. So they not only have church basements, but they have kitchens, and they have parking lots, and they have land on them. Like we're doing a lot of reforestation on church property because churches have a lot of land, it turns out. So, and they also tend to be where a lot of social justice work happens. So like you don't go to rich neighborhoods and distribute food, because the rich neighborhoods already have food. What you want to do is go to the places that have the greatest need and find the best partners you can find. And I'm just telling you, like I literally told 60 college students today Like this work is so meaningful. Like if you feel like you, especially young people, are like wondering what the hell to do with yourselves because the world seems chaotic and you don't know what to do, and the job market looks weird, and you don't want to do the same old junky jobs that your parents did or your grandparents. Like getting involved in work that helps people at the grassroots is very powerful. And it's well worth pursuing as something either for your job or as part of whatever else you do. But like don't underestimate the meaning that you personally will get by doing this kind of good work. Ask Marissa. She will tell you that working for justice is like it's good for everybody else, but it's also good for you. Like you might be surprised how good it is for you to do it. It is very spiritually fulfilling. So I think that's worth pointing out.
And that leads perfectly into the question that I was going to ask McKay, which is from the lessons you learned from working with folks, and we can engage with this work as kind of an ally or accomplice instead of like a savior to these communities.
Yeah, I mean, this question is most directed, especially at white people and white people of means, of substance, of privilege, or whatever you want to say. Like if you have like a really fancy education, or if you have a really fancy bank account, or you have a really fancy PhD, or whatever you've got, you might think that you know better. And what you're going to do is go save somebody. You're going to go save some community. You're going to drop your science, or you're going to drop your wisdom, or whatever it is. And that is kind of an old story at this point. Like people in communities don't want that. They don't need that. What they want, like anybody wants, is they want to be in community. They want to feel like you are a friend, that you are reliable, that you are consistent, that you're not going to come on MLK Day for an hour and make mac and cheese and then disappear again. That's not what they want. Like I don't know whose benefit that's for. I mean, it's not the worst thing. There are worse things to do than that, but it's a long way from the best thing. And what I have found in the work that I do, the most meaningful work for me, and I think the most effective work for the people and the communities I work with, is showing up all the time, week after week after week after week after week after week after week. And then by then, eventually, after a long time, they might actually begin to trust you, and they might actually begin to confide in you, and might actually have really powerful conversations about what we all should be doing together. So it's just like any relationship. Like the more time you put into it, the more you invest in it, the more you're going to get out of it. You don't want to have a superficial relationship with your parents or your boyfriend or anybody else. And you don't want to have a superficial relationship with the people in your community. You want to have a deep relationship with them. And the way you do it with anybody is by being reliable and trustworthy and consistent. And maybe, Marissa, maybe what you're looking for is like also like come in underneath the community, not from above the community. Like come in and ask questions and say, what would be best? How can I be most valuable to you? And let them tell you. Let them tell you what they need, because they know what they need. Everybody knows what they need. They don't need you to tell them. You're probably going to miss the point.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to thank you. This is so awesome, and tie it together with our work at Plastic Free Delaware, which we got involved in food waste and community composting because, just so everyone knows, food waste is about 25% of what ends up in the landfill. And you think about what McKay said, I mean, it's just such a waste. Now, a lot of that stuff, is like trimmings from carrots and things like that that you might not eat, but farm animals might eat it, or it can become soil again rather than ending up in the landfill. But we've been doing a lot of work around food waste, and I just was I put it in the chat, but recently California was the first state to pass a law to update the food date labeling, that McKay mentioned, because that's part of the problem with food waste. My husband is the same way. Like he'll say, best by a certain date. He'll throw it out if it's past that date. But generally, those dates are really misleading because the producers want you to throw it out and buy new again, right?
Exactly.
So, but I was blown away because I learned when I heard about California's law, I asked ReFed, the organization that was at least in part behind it, and they said that there's no federal law for date labeling. And I was blown away that there was no federal law. Like, you would think that would be an obvious law that would hold across the country. But thankfully, California's taking the lead. And as the biggest state in the country, they can often really make a huge difference, because all the packaging companies and food producers are going to have to adhere to their new law. And then, like all the other states, they'll probably just, follow suit with them as well. But it's something we can maybe work on here in Delaware.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. I literally spend semesters talking about this stuff that you just mentioned, but like the food industry is, you know, as self-interested as any industry. They are not doing stuff for your health. They're not doing stuff for the environment. They're not doing stuff for anybody except the profit of the company. And don't get me started. I have actually literally written a book on this subject. It's called Food Fight, if anybody wants to check it out. The other thing I wanted to mention, and I just heard this today, so I can't confirm it. I think Baltimore just passed a rule that said if you buy food, the first uh, level is human consumption. The second thing if you're not going to eat it, the second thing you are now apparently obliged to do is feed it to an animal, and the third thing you're obliged to do is to compost it. So three things have to happen before you're allowed to throw it away. Now, I don't know what that looks like. I don't know how you would enforce that, but the idea is let's bump up the use of food at some level that is beneficial, either to a person or an animal or to soil. And if you can't figure that out, then put it in the garbage. But the garbage is like the last resort.
All
Professor,
right. Well, if nobody has anything else, Isha, were you gonna?
I was just gonna ask if it would be okay for you to put your email address or something in the chat. Like, I think a lot of people would want to reach out and like learn more from you. Okay, thank you. Okay, you go ahead now, Carter.
Well, I was just gonna say if nobody has any other questions, then thank you so much. Your talk today was absolutely amazing, and I think the work that you do is really, really powerful. I'm sure we all do, and we really appreciate your time with us today.
Well, thanks for having me. And you've got Marissa McClinton on this call, and you can't find a better mentor. So you want to talk to her about anything, and she's a very, very good guide for stuff. So you're lucky to have her in your community. Thank you, guys. I hope to see you again.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thanks so much.
You bet.
Thank you, Carter, for organizing that. It was a really good talk that he gave.
I want to
Yeah.
go back to college now.
I want to go take his class.
I
Yeah,
know, right?
I probably took I took three classes with McKay. Um, the minor he was talking about is actually my minor that I took because I took a class with him. Like that is one of my biggest mentors in the work that I do. So I'm so glad that y'all got to hear from him. Like that is why I am the way that I am. Like the books he had me read, incredibly transformative. So yeah, that was amazing.
And to all of you who asked questions, thank you so much for doing that. It really helps to make any presenter we have come and feel appreciated. And also, it's great to know more because that was really cool.
Okay. Yeah, just
You guys have Carter, I don't know if I missed it earlier because I came in a little bit late, but are you planning to do more of these little sessions?
Yeah, definitely. So I'm going to try to have one every month, hopefully. So far, I have somebody scheduled for December. I'm still working on November because I had two potential people that were interested in December. But yeah, so hopefully we'll be able to have different people come in and talk about their work and just more about their experiences and kind of what everybody on this team can do to, if they want to be more involved with environmental advocacy.
Great. Well done.
Looking at what Subi sent in the chat, I think that's honestly a really good suggestion.
Perhaps he could be the one that speaks at lunch.
Yeah,
Talk
it's about food.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we want a food-based topic that's actually tying it back to the environment and helping people, then that would be really cool, I think.
And I think it's early enough that we could get our act together to do the audit this year.
Well, maybe I'll have to start talking to the Chase Center about that.
Yeah, I know. It's going to be a heavy lift there. This place is massive.
But yeah, we should actually, Stephanie, let's talk about that.
Yeah. Okay.
You could also all check with your grocery stores to see what they do with expired food. I know Sprouts in Wilmington gives to the food bank. Because one time I asked them what they did with it.
A lot of the grocery stores and the restaurants have, if you guys are looking for volunteer opportunities, they have pickups at the end of the day. And I know someone that picks up like from Panera once a month or twice a month, every other Monday or something like that. His job, he goes to Panera and picks up there and takes it to a food bank. So there's a lot of that going on. And I know that there's also a lot of, sorry, Sherry, a lot of the, I just learned this, that a lot of the vegetable matter that's coming out of grocery stores in Delaware is being picked up and going up just across the line in Pennsylvania to farms to feed animals. So at least it's not going to the landfill, which I was pleased to learn.
Yeah, I was just going to say there are also community gardens all over Delaware that you could get involved in if you would like.
Someone mentioned in the chat, it might have been Elisa, the Delaware Urban Food and Farm Coalition. You can Google them. I think on their website they have a map of all the community gardens. I'm pretty sure. So, but you can definitely Google them and find them.
And if anyone has any suggestions for future speakers for Carter, you guys can always email him. It's kind of nice. Like we kind of have like a test drive of what they're gonna, their like speaking style. And if we like it, we can invite them to do a workshop or even like a plenary session.
Yeah, definitely. If anybody has suggestions, just let me know, because I still have probably 3 or 4 more people to schedule. So if you have any suggestions, just email me.
Or even if it's just like areas of interest, like what do you guys want to learn more about? And then Carter and the adults or whoever else wants to help out with this can like track these people down. So like when we started Eco Alliance at Charter, there was a kid on the team that was really into technology and trying to look at like how technology can help improve our sustainability efforts. And so like he worked on that. Another one worked on like textiles. Another one worked on invasives, tree planting. So are there certain topics that you're interested in exploring more? If you don't know the context, that's fine. But if you can give us like a sense of what you're interested in, then we could probably find speakers for that.
We are running a little over time. Should we? Okay, our next meeting, I believe, is going to be on November 14th, same time. If you're having any trouble with like the meeting links or anything, let me know. But if you have the master calendar, you should like have all the upcoming meetings there in one place. So yeah. Okay, do any committees want to like stay after for breakout rooms?
Logistics, everyone please stay. We need to have a meeting.
Any other committees? Or just logistics? Okay. I guess.
Before we let the other committees go, I just wanted to ask the question, if workshops had settled on a number, like how many speakers are you guys looking for? And did we